Recording is on. Go
Excellent.
ahead, Bruce.
Okay. Thanks, Henry. Um, Quick introduction for me. I'm a physics faculty member. Been at the University of Oklahoma for a long time. In fact, I'm retiring coming up. Um, and this is a talk that I started giving to IT professionals many years ago, just to get them to try to understand faculty. Um, so just think about this as here's an introduction to why faculty may be as difficult or interesting or whatever you want to call them as they might be. So this is really a follow-up on what Henry talked about this morning about some of the pressures and needs that faculty go through. I want to again, like he mentioned, make sure that we're talking the same language. So go over some faculty and then end up with talking about what how academic life, tenure, promotion, and so forth is changing these days because of internal and external pressures. So to start, I want everybody to open up their chat. If you don't have it, open up already. And I want to find out a little bit about you. So what I want everyone to do, if they could, is to tell me if you've had an academic position now or in the past. Tell me what you were, whether it's a research professor, full professor, whatever. I want to find out what the audience is. And if you've never had such an academic position, sort of tell me what you consider your job title to be, or job titles. Okay, good, good, good. I think you're still okay. First, I'm not sure what you are.
Well, I got that appointment a long time ago, so I'm assuming it's still there.
I I, I think so, but okay, okay. Uh, Good. Okay, it looks like there's not many faculty members, so I can make all sorts of rude comments about faculty members in this talk. That will make my life easier. Excellent. Okay, so moving along. Oh, there's one. We do have an assistant professor and an instructor, and we have some academics here. Okay, so as I said, I want to make sure that we're talking the same language. Um, and so this is your academic vocabulary test. There will be a test at the end of the talk. And so I want to ask you to go through this list of academic titles, and let me know which of these you're not sure what they mean or you want to find a little bit better. Um, any distinctions that you have. We'll be going through this, but I want to start out with thinking about this list because these are the people that you're going to run into as as you help out faculty. All right, provost. Trustee, that's sometimes a board of regents, or it's like a board of directors for the institution. Um, Endowed, we'll get to, those are the ones that have a bunch of external money. So regents and trustees, those are different names for the same position on different campuses. The department chair, those are the people who are in charge of running an academic department. The dean is over the department chair. They're the ones that run a college. So colleges will have departments. So the dean is the boss of the department chairs. So those are the differences there. we'll talk about the different levels of professors. That's one of the biggest things we're going to be doing. And talking about the difference between the ones on the left, assistant professor, associate professor, and the ones on the right, adjunct professor and research professor. So that's where we're going to go. So these are the these are the titles that you're going to run into. And so let's see if we can organize these so that we can understand what they mean. So let's start at the top. Trustees, regents, these are the people that run the board for public institutions. These are usually appointed by your governor or legislature. For private institutions, they're usually elected or appointed. These are the ones that hopefully you will never have to deal with. The only people who have to deal with tend to be the presidents. Next in line are the people that run the department. I mean, run the university or the college. Sometimes they're called presidents, sometimes they're called chancellors. Sometimes the difference between presidents and chancellors depends on if it's a single campus or you have multiple campuses. But these terms are used interchangeably to be the people who really are the CEOs of the institution. Their main job in a lot of cases is to raise money. Next are the vice presidents, usually starting with the provost. He's in charge of academic programs. And then you have other vice presidents in charge of research, administration, executive operations, maybe a CIO. So these are the vice president levels. In corporate, these would be called the C-suite, the CIO, the CFO, and so forth. Underneath the provost are the deans. Each of these deans are in charge of a college. So maybe your university has a college of arts and sciences, or a college of engineering, or a college of natural sciences, or a college of journalism. These are the people, the administrators that run the college at that level. Again, chances are you're not going to be running into those much until you get bumped up, as Henry was talking about, bumped up the food ladder so that you have to deal with administrative issues. Also administrators, but connected to individual units, are the chairs or directors. So if you have, for example, I'm in the Department of Physics, so there's a chair who's in charge of my department. Similarly, you might have a school of electrical engineering who has a director running that. So in these, underneath the chairs and directors are the people that are within the department. And kind of in order of, this is kind of a pecking order. The ones with the biggest names are the endowed professors or chairs. Again, these are people that have a lot of prestige and often a lot of money with them. And then there are 3 levels of tenured professors, and this is a main part of this talk, is talking about tenures. So the full professors are the ones that made it all the way through. Associate professors are the ones that are sort of mid-career, and assistant professors are the new ones. And then more and more, there are what are called renewable term professors. These are people that have multi-year professor appointments, but they're not tenured. And so that's a main topic that we'll be discussing here. And then there's another level of professors or researchers They range from a research professor to instructors or adjunct instructors, the graduate research assistants. And the division here is simply where they fit into the budget. So the ones on the left are hard money positions. In other words, there are lines in the institution's budget with these people's names on them. So this is money that is connected to multi-year money that are connected to particular positions, particular people. On the right are people that are more on soft money. So as Henry pointed out this morning, if all possible, you want to go from soft money to hard money because soft money can disappear. Hard money is a little bit more permanent. And so this is the distinctions that we need to make in thinking about who you're going to be working with and who you're going to be supporting. So this is an outline sort of organization of these terms. What questions do you have? We'll be talking a lot more about particularly the ones on the left, but do you have any questions about who these are and what they do? Well, excellent. As I said, there's going to be a test at the end, so make sure you know. So what I wanted to talk about for the first part of this talk is this idea of tenure. And so what do you know right now about tenure? So academic tenure, I want you again to use the chat and tell me, what is academic tenure? Define what it is. What do you think it is? What do you know about it? What's academic tenure? Okay, job security. What else? Well, we'll talk about even if you stink at it. There are things you need to be careful of. Good, good. Okay, good, 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 good. So these are all excellent questions. Freedom of research without repercussions. Again, we'll be getting into the issues that are happening now with the institution of tenure. Yeah, as one of my colleagues once said, getting tenure is like winning the lottery. You're guaranteed $50,000 then for life. So not quite a guarantee. So good definitions. Let me show you how it is defined by our faculty. I'll let you read this a little bit. Tenure is a means to assure unfettered, unbiased, unencumbered search, verification, and communication of truth. So what do you think? You might guess by my highlighting the comment of the words of truth But yeah, it's a little bit highfalutin there. And again, think about um, the faculty that wrote this. This might tell you a little bit about what the faculty think of themselves. Um, it is pretty highfalutin. It's uh, maybe a little overblown, but it's the goal of, as some of you said, freedom to pursue things that you think are important. So let's talk about the process. Let's talk about the process. And what I want to do is go through the process of getting tenure and then going beyond tenure. So this is the academic timeline. And we're going to, yeah, the faculty senate writes this stuff. It's approved by the regents, but yeah, the faculty senate, this is that comment, that description was written by faculty. So yeah. So here we go. Academic timeline. Graduate school, let's start graduate, say year 0 for the academic timeline is when someone starts graduate school. So, they're 22, 23. Smart ones are 18, 19, really smart ones. And so this is sort of the steps through the academic levels. So first question, how long does it take the average graduate student to finish their PhD? Five years, 5 years, 10 years. Wow. 6 years, 6 to 8, 7. Good, good. Yeah, we'll talk about averages. And, you're sort of right. The averages are, at least in physical sciences, about 6 years. Computer science, it's more like 8 years. Engineering, more like 7 years. So, 6 to 8. I'm going to be using physics a lot, so we're going to just say 6. So the time it takes to finish the graduate degree, the PhD, is about 6 years. Someone asked about postdocs. Well, usually a lot of students after their graduate school go on and do postdocs, but some don't. Some of them go right into permanent positions. In particular, some of them go into the private sector. And what this is actually 2020, the starting salaries for people who just got their PhD. And if you look at this, if the people go into the private sector, sort of the median is around $120,000 to $125,000 per year. Those that go into postdocs, temporary positions, it's sort of $60,000 to $70,000 a year. And even if you're starting in an academic position, it's $70,000 to $80,000 a year. So the question is, who in their right mind would decide to take a job for $60,000 a year when they, in fact, could get a private sector job for twice that? Why in the world would you do that? Private sector is soul sucking. That's a good suggestion. And basically, basically the idea is they want to have the freedom and the flexibility and the individual drive of a research position. So again, let's think about faculty. Faculty are people that chose to go into their research fields because they like it so much for a cost and a significant cost. So here we go. They decide to do this. So most of them go into a postdoc. Someone mentioned that. So there's a period of time before you even get into the tenure track, before you start an assistant professor job. These are your postdoc years. Henry talked about this. Any thoughts on how long the postdocs usually last? Years to 10 years. Yeah, I mean, it depends a lot on the discipline. Some disciplines, not many people do postdocs, but the physical sciences, sort of everybody who goes into at least research faculty does this. I'm going to say 4 years. I think that's kind of an average, 4 to 5 years. But you're now at 10 years past when you start graduate school. So you're at year 10 when you started graduate school. Just about everybody who goes, particularly into research programs, does a postdoc. And this is when the tenure actually starts. This is when the process starts. When you get tenure is, as Henry said, that's 7 years. So the tenure process usually takes 7 years. So you're now at year 17 when you're tenured. So starting from when you entered graduate school, you're now about 40. So you talk about stability and permanent positions and so forth. You don't get that until your late 30s to around 40 in general. And that's when, if you get tenured, you make it to tenure. So not a simple process. It's a process that costs you money. So if you think about the faculty, the research faculty that you're working with, these are people that have decided to do this. These are the people that are so interested or connected to what they want to do to go through this process. And the stability that you're talking about doesn't come real quick. So let's talk about this actual process. Let's talk about tenure itself. As I said, you get hired at university or college as a new assistant professor on the tenure track. What do? You've got 6 years to show that you're productive. So you've got 6 years of academic productivity. At the end of those 6 years, you have to write your life story. You got to tell people what you've done, what your successes are, how well you are doing, and that you actually deserve to be tenured. That life story goes to external reviewers. These are usually people that your department picks. You don't pick them, the department picks them. And they write letters and send back saying, yeah, I mean, you got something that is worthwhile. You've done something that's worthwhile, or maybe you haven't. So you get external reviews. All of this material goes to your department, and the department votes on you. If once the department votes on it, it goes up the chain to the dean of your college, to a campus tenure committee, to the provost, and finally to the regents. This whole process takes most of a year to do. You're usually writing your letters in the fall, and you don't hear about the result of the tenure vote and your final outcome until the spring. And if you think about the assistant professors that are going through this process, they are probably pretty stressed during the time going up to when they have to put their tenure packet together. And also during this whole process where people are reading their life stories and voting on them. Tenure is somewhat used as a carrot to attract talent. Again, it gives people more freedom to pursue what they want. It's, in most cases, the tradition is that people who want to do research expect tenure if they're going to be part of a university. And so to get the best people, you probably need to give them tenure to say, yeah, we really want you, and they're going to stick around. Different universities, this operates somewhat differently. Some universities, most of the people going up for tenure make it. Other universities, very few people make it through this tenure process from assistant to associate. If you don't make it, you're looking for another job. And that's another thing that happens during the 6th and 7th year, as Henry mentioned. So that's the process, the actual down and dirty, what you have to do to get tenure. Any thoughts on this or questions about the steps? This is pretty standard in pretty much all colleges and universities. Yeah, for good universities, during the 6 years of productivity, you're told along the way, you get annual evaluations at least that tell you how you're doing. So universities that do a good job with the tenure process will tell their faculty what is needed and how they're doing. So in most cases, it's not a surprise. But in general, everybody will go up for tenure after the 6 year, even if it's possible that they're not going to get it. There's also possibilities in some cases of changing the process, expanding the time frame a little bit for cases where it's necessary. So, Cynthia, question about what academic productivity means. Excellent question. There it is. If you go through and you think about and look at what is expected of faculty, these are the things that you're reviewed on. And in all of my annual evaluations, these are all the things that I have to talk about and list and tell the university I've been doing this year. This is considered my academic productivity. Couple of questions here. Need to add workforce development. Yeah, I mean, you probably have things here that expand on the last two, teaching and service. workforce development is, expanding some of those things. And at some universities, that is more of that. Someone asked about priority. I think this is more like the priority at most universities, particularly research universities. This is for during the tenure process. This is the process from assistant to associate professor. And I think this is pretty standard in particularly research universities. Publications and money, sometimes in terms of money, the fact that you've written grants, even if you've gotten them, can count. But bringing in money is really important. Publications is the main way things are graded in most cases. And it's not just publications, it's also where you publish. Get the top journals. A science or nature article. Or are you publishing in Joe's journal on condensed matter physics, which may not look real good. But yeah, I mean, particularly during this process, it's get the publications out, write the grants, particularly in engineering. Patents are considered very important. Collaborations and talks are important in terms of getting your external reviews done so people can know your name. These are directions that, in general, people are looking and grading the tenure packet on. So all academic productivity is not the same. And again, this means that those assistant professors who are working to get to associate professor and get tenure, they are writing papers and they are writing grants, and that's really what they focus on. And so anything that you can do that helps them in that direction, they will appreciate. Anything that you do that gets in their way of these processes, they might not be real happy about those things happening. So this is during the first 6 or 7 years. In terms of academic productivity, the publication rate, again, depends on the journal. Really high quality, high impact journals, publication rates can be 5%. Money, I think Henry mentioned this, these numbers actually are good compared to what they were 4 or 5 years ago. This is the NSF information from 2023, and we showed the funding rate. These are actually numbers of proposals in each of the directorates, and the funding rate just around 30%, which means that you got to write 3 grants to hope to get 1. NIH, I just looked up the numbers for NIH. I think these and National Endowments for Humanities, these were 24% and 16% were the numbers that I pulled up this morning of their funding rates. So writing lots of grants, writing lots of papers. If you hope to get tenure, that's what you got to be doing. And so the faculty members that you're helping, this is what they're going to be focusing on, particularly those assistant professors that are working for tenure. We also can talk about what's the need for tenured faculty. Again, this is physics, kind of numbers for 2020, 2021. The number of new in 2021 was about 1,800. This is in physics. So there were about 1,800 new doctorates in 2021. About the same year, if you look at the number of tenure and tenure track faculty recruitments out there, there was about 370. So this is a not too wide open field. It's pretty competitive. The number of doctorates is much larger than the number of tenure track faculty. So the people that are doing this are really, again, focused on wanting to be faculty and dealing with this. Similarly, the number of faculty that leave without tenure each year is about 16%. So the number of departures each year is about equal to the number of new tenure track faculties. So it's not a growing business. People who go into this should realize this. Most people leave, not that many people leave without tenure, but there's not many positions to open to actually get into the tenure track. It's exclusive. It's not easy to get to these appointments. So again, no tenure, you leave. And again, go back to money. Maybe this is crass of me, but for example, if you go to physical sciences, again, postdoc positions or academic positions, you're not going to make nearly the money you do in industry or business. So people that do this are people that are really focused on doing independent research, getting the prestige, wanting the freedom to do what they want. Some of them want to be involved in the education of new scientists and new engineers, and want to be involved in the teaching side of things. So these are very focused people that want to do the things that they're doing. So the focus, again, if you look at some of the papers that people might write, they are very specific. So if you want to talk about their research, they love talking about the research, but they're also focused on very specific things. So you might need to spend some time talking to them and listening to them and really thinking about what they're really doing. It's their life. I mean, that's why they went through all this pain and headache and stress to get their tenure track jobs, is because they really want to do very focused and really want to spend their life working hard on the research they're doing. So the idea of faculty as the sort of people that you're going to be dealing with, they love what they're doing, and they're here because they love what they're doing. And so you need to meet them at that level of they love what they're doing. Okay, so that was the tenure track position. You go from graduate school to associate professor. You're now tenured, which means that your job is permanent within reason. The next step is to go from associate professor to what's called full professor. This can happen at any time. It depends on what they're doing, what they're interested in. It's a similar sort of process to go from associate professor to full professor. Assistant to associate, that happens with the tenure position. For full professor, it's the same sort of thing that you need to do. What the main criteria for full professor is that you get a really broad recognition for your research and your productivity. So you're established, you give invited talks, maybe you get involved with editing journals, you become involved in bigger projects. So greater recognition, you can get full professor. Big thing here is that you get a raise. So your tenure is not more secure, you just get more money. And it's the same sort of thing. Post-tenure academic productivity, you're doing the same sorts of things as before. The publications and money and so forth continue. You'll be involved in more service. So it's not like your job gets easier. You're just doing more different things, taking more leadership. We'll talk about distinguished professors next. But here's the main changes between assistant to associate and associate to full is your leadership. So distinguished professorships, endowed professorships, or these are sometimes called chairs. The difference here is basically this word endowed, which means it has money attached to it. So the way endowed professorships tend to work, and this may be slightly jaded of me, but it's kind of the way things work, is that some way a university raises a bunch of money, gets a donor to donate things, or some way gets a bunch of money. And usually the funds are for specific things. So they have a donor that likes to do something or is interested in something. And then they go out and they steal somebody from another university. So this is someone that has established reputation. They get the money to probably bring them to the university. The goal here is, or the expectation here is that this extra money that goes with the endowed professorship will result in someone who can bring in even more money to the university. And in many cases, because they have their own independent money, they set up their own fiefdom and run their research project and hire a lot of research scientists and postdocs and have a lot of graduate students and get a lot of grants. And so these are the people with the highest reputations in the research fields. This essentially is a way of improving the reputation of the university as a whole by having, the stars in the research fields come to the university. Okay, so that's the process from graduate student to endowed professors. These are, again, those hard money positions that are permanent, that have lines in the budget to the position. Any questions about that process before we get into all of the details about where this doesn't work? Okay, so let's talk about the details here of what happens with tenure. Well, first of all, tenure is not permanent. tenure can be terminated. In general, there are a number of reasons for tenure. It goes everywhere from breaking the law to some things that are really problematic these days, which is tenure can be removed by a university declaring a financial an emergency, which means that if they think there's money problems, they can say, well, all bets are off, tenure can be removed. The other thing that's happening and is particularly prominent these days is that tenure is reviewed. Some universities are doing this, or a lot of universities are doing this because of outside pressure. In some cases, it's being imposed from the outside by legislatures or governors. And so people with tenure do need to review what they've done. And it's not like you can just say, well, I've got my tenure, I don't have to work anymore. So let's talk about post-tenure review. This example is from OU. I think this is fairly standard these days. At OU, you've got to do a review of yourself every 5 years. There's actually annual reviews. So part of this is you put together your annual reviews, but then every 5 years you write out an evaluation that includes what you've done, what your plans are for the future, what you're going to do for the next 5 years. And then this is reviewed at the departmental level and say, is this someone who is doing the things that they should take care of? This, as I said, this goes along with your annual evaluations. The department reads it, looks at it, and says either, yes, you're doing what you should do, or no, you're not. Again, this goes to the dean and the provost. If it's okay, you get to work for another 5 years. If it's not okay, you have to write up a professional development plan talking about how you're going to improve over the next 5 years. And if you don't do that, if after the next post-tenure review, your tenure can be removed. So tenure is not guaranteed. It's not permanent. These days, it's being reviewed in pretty much all universities because people are wanting to make sure that the faculty members with tenure are really doing the things that they're supposed to do. You may wonder about teaching. Notice that teaching was not highlighted on this. It's not that teaching isn't important, and there's a lot of faculty that take their teaching very seriously. There's also a lot of research going on with teaching. So faculty are dedicated, making classes better, going from the large lecture hall on the left to much more better teaching environments on the right. There's a lot of research going on how to educate better. There's also a tendency now of hiring some professors who their job is specifically to deal with teaching and improve the teaching at research institutions. So in general, particularly the tenure process does not look at teaching that strongly, but it's still important. And there's been a shift in terms of the importance of teaching in some cases. In terms of quotas on the number of tenured professors, usually that's related to, that's related to your institution, but it's also managed more at the hiring position. So, universities will hire people with the expectation of some fraction of them getting tenure. In some institutions, people are hired at the assistant professor level with the assumption that they will get tenure, and therefore there's a position available for them, which means that you wait until faculty retire. In some cases, there are universities that will hire 2 assistant professors for only 1 tenure slot, depends on what they are. And again, the teaching depends on the institution. Research institutions, heavy research institutions, teaching may be 25 to 33% of your evaluations. Other institutions, like Cal State, it's a larger percentage. I'll talk about minorities in just a bit. One thing that has happened is a lot of universities have looked at the hiring process and making sure that it is more equitable. And for the tenure process, they are reviewing that as well. But the numbers are not good, particularly in disciplines like physical sciences and physics. So I'll get to some of those numbers in just a second. So again, abrogation of tenure, I mentioned this a little bit. One thing that is happening just recently is the student population is going down, and they're expecting it to go down more in the near future. And that is changing how universities are dealing with their finances, and academic units, departments are being closed because of a lack of students. And so this is another way that tenured professors are being removed and losing their jobs by actually eliminating the units, the departments that they live in. So look at that. Here is a map showing what's happening to academic units in various, or actually the number of students in various states. In some states, the drop in student population is over 15%. In some cases, it's growing, but in most cases, it's declining. And in these cases, West Virginia is a perfect example. The universities are changing drastically their departments because they're not having, they don't have the student population, and therefore the budgets. That's exactly right. Tenure is most likely, but not definitely. And there's always ways of saying, you can remove tenured faculty. The other side of it is that, except for the list of reasons, it's very hard to remove faculty. I think that the demographic decline is important, and the fact that in some states there is real cultural issues relating the universities to what's going on in the state legislatures. So that's definitely things that are going on. So tenure does give you some promise of more security. It's not permanent. Some other thoughts about what's going on in the status of the faculty. Here are some numbers from the AAU about the population of different types of faculty appointments over the years. This goes from about 1985 to 2021. And tenure track faculty have dropped from over half to about a third of all faculty. Part-time faculty, these are people that are hired to teach a few classes each semester. That's gone up to nearly half. But the other thing that's happened is that there's a lot more permanent full-time positions that are not tenured. So these are positions that are what I call renewable term. So they're usually set for 3 to 5 years, but they are renewed every 3 to 5 years. And therefore, they're real easy to not renew. And so these are positions that are more easily removed and cut. This is a figure showing what institutions have changed tenure lines to non-tenured lines. And, essentially around 50%, depending on the type of institution, around 50% of all institutions have changed lines from tenured to contingent lines, which means that they can more easily be removed. So tenured faculty, which have more of a permanent role in the university, are decreasing in numbers and percentages. Here's the same thing more specifically by type of institutions. So in R1 institutions, you have a lot more tenure track, 50%. So in smaller colleges and 2-year colleges, you have a lot more part-time faculty that are here for a couple of courses each semester and then leave. They have no power. They're not paid well. They're in pretty unfortunate straits in general. Just changes that have happened in what the academic fields look like that has happened over the past 20 years or so. It's interesting that actually the number of part-time positions have decreased while the full-time positions have increased. But again, the increase in full-time positions, most of those are in non-tenured positions that have a lot less support. All of this is varied by institutions and states and level of institution. So this varies quite a bit. Asked about diversity, here's some numbers from 2020 that give you at each level the percentage of faculty by race or gender or ethnicity. Notice that large percentages are either a white male or white female, with particularly in the full professor rank being dominated by over 50% being white male. Changing a little bit with time, but not enough. So the diversity is not what most people would like to see. However, what has been seen is that institutions, this was a survey done by the AAUP, institutions have looked at their tenured standards and their hiring standards for the implicit bias and diversity issues. So it is something that all institutions are aware of, and some review has been going on. Hopefully that will improve things in the future. But again, with some of the state laws that are coming up, it's even more difficult to it'll be even more difficult to make progress on these issues. So, departments where there have been large changes or even attempts to remove tenure, it's in a lot of states and not just completely red states. It's a continuing process. So again, tenure sounds permanent, but it's not. And there's a process going on of a lot of process and changes going on in higher education that just adds extra uncertainty to the faculty positions and the way the universities will operate. So that's where I'm going to end up. That is a quick overview of what faculty are like and what they're and what faculty are like and what they are the stresses and interests that they have. The line drawn between R1 and R2, I think, are mostly just research expenditures. So academic titles normally associated with research lab managers. These are quite often maybe research professors in some cases. In some cases, they are just research staff, depending on the department, as usual. These are people that you're going to be dealing with day to day in developing your, in providing services, to your providing services to your users. But it's not just the lab managers. As Henry pointed out, there's a lot of grad assistants that do an awful lot of the grunt work for the research going on. So here's your test. I told you there's going to be a test. Here is your test. Let me actually copy the link in here. So I have two questions. You may answer them the same, or you may think about them or answer them differently. And you can do it on the Google Docs, or you can do it here. Here are the people that we've talked about, the listing of academic titles and academic jobs. The two questions are, who do you need to watch out for? And you can take that as you want. And who do you need to help? And again, these may be different, answers. I think that they are. So I want you to think about that. We can have a discussion in the chat too. But put your notes in the Google Doc as to, in your job, who do you think you need to watch out for? And who needs your help? So Lauren put in the listing the classifications from the Carnegie endowment. So if you want to look at where you are and what the levels are, you can see what those are. I like that. If you're finding that you're working with the trustees, you've climbed the ladder and you're no longer a CI facilitator. Absolutely. Yeah, quite often, the grad students are the ones that are tasked with a lot of the on the ground work. And so you will be meeting with them quite a bit. Um, Instructors, it depends. Quite often, instructors are so wrapped up in teaching way too many students that you may not see as much of those. So, any questions about this as you're going through and thinking about um, who these people are and what they're doing? Yeah, the chairs can have money. Oh, and to follow up on Henry's comment, another thing that I didn't mention, but I'm sure most of you have run into, and that is most faculty members think they know a lot more than they actually do. And in areas where they think they know things when they really don't. So that's another thing to consider in dealing with faculty that are going through or have gone through this whole process. And Henry, we won't name any names as to some of the um, faculty that may have have spread poison around. We'll keep that to ourselves. Benjamin, your guide is excellent. That's very nice. Any other thoughts or questions? We're just about done with my scheduled time frame. Let's see. Someone had the excellent point that um, if you have happy users, try to get notes from them saying that they're happy users. That can help a lot. Good. Good. Well, Henry, I think I'm done.
And right on schedule, I might add.
Well, I try to be efficient. After a couple of semesters of during COVID teaching online, I'm pretty good at going through this and hitting the mark.
Yep. All right. I will shut off the recording then.